Judge's Corner is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the best online retailer for Magic the Gathering singles and sealed product, and GatheringMagic.com, your place to explore the game. Now it's time for Judge's Corner.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Judge's Corner. Today we're going to be talking about Colorless. Not anything black or white or red, blue, or green, but rather the varying shades of gray. In today's episode, talking about colorless cards, colorless mana, and everything else colorless related. Colorless cards are cards devoid of any color mana symbols in their cost, or color in their color indicator. You will notice that the majority of colorless cards are lands and artifacts, but there are also colorless planeswalkers, creatures, instants, sorceries, and whatever else the future may hold. But there are also exceptions to these rules, and you'll even see some lands and artifacts that have a color. When looking at a card's color, you'll normally identify it by its mana cost, or color indicator. A colorless card is identified mostly by the lack of a colored mana symbol in its cost, but sometimes cards don't have a cost, not even zero. In those cases, the card's color is identified by its color indicator, which is typically placed next to the type line, like seen on cards such as Pact of Negation. In other cases, the cost might contain a certain color on the card's casting cost, but it isn't a color thanks to a characteristic defining ability printed on the card, like Devoid. While this characteristic defining ability says they are colorless, it doesn't include their color identity. A card's color identity is determined by all mana symbols printed on the card and any color indicators. For example, Oracle of Dust might be colorless, but it cannot be played in a colorless commander deck, since its color identity is blue, which is seen by the blue mana symbol on its casting cost. But it can be played in a commander deck run by Maelstrom Wanderer, since one of the general's colors is blue. Another card with a strange color identity is Memnarch. Memnarch is a colorless artifact creature because its casting cost is 7 generic mana. But its color identity is blue because of the 2 activated abilities that require blue mana in its cost. So, Memnarch is colorless but cannot be played in a commander deck run by a colorless general because Memnarch's color identity is blue and not colorless. Now, before we move on, there's still a little more to Devoid that you should know. While most of them do have some kind of color identity, they are still colorless. This means that the creature Oracle of Dusk can be found with cards like Ancient Stirrings. Also, since cards with Devoid are colorless, that means that they can block creatures with protection of a color, like how a Culling Drone can block a White Knight, even when White Knight has protection from black, and that's because Culling Drone is colorless. Speaking of colorless mana has been in the spotlight with Oath of the Gatewatch. Colorless mana is any mana produced that isn't white, blue, black, red, or green. It can be endowed with other riders, like colorless snow mana, or colorless mana that makes something uncounterable. Colorless mana can only be spent on generic costs on cards, or, in the future, on colorless mana costs. But we'll talk more about that in a later episode. For now, the important thing to know is that cards that produce colorless mana, even when the mana symbol they produce isn't the new colorless mana symbol, still produce colorless mana. So, older cards, like the Painlands or Sol Ring, will still produce colorless mana, but new iterations will make it clear that they tap for colorless mana by replacing the generic mana with the new colorless mana symbol. But does that mean cards like Memnarch or Emrakul the Aeon's Torn now require you to pay with colorless mana? Nope. The way you cast Memnarch or Emrakul or the hundreds of other cards will remain the same, which was, and still is, any type of mana. The only time this new colorless mana symbol is required to be spent are on cards that have a colorless mana symbol in its cost, like Kozilek the Great Distortion. Well, that's it for our episode. If you have any questions about this episode or any other questions in general, you can always send us an email at judgescorner@gatheringmagic.com or leave a comment below. And stay tuned where we're going to talk more about colorless mana when it officially becomes released in the coming weeks and months from now. Until next time, make sure to shuffle thoroughly, play at a reasonable pace, and have fun.